He was 6 years old, blind, and had been passed over by every prospective family for 3 years. Tina Turner spent 14 months cutting through every legal barrier between her and that child. Nobody could explain why she was so certain. She said, "I heard him sing." It was the spring of 1982, and Tina Turner was 42 years old and in the middle of the longest stretch of professional uncertainty she had experienced since the early years, the years before Ike, before the name, before any of it. The Private Dancer album was still 2 years away. The comeback that would redefine everything had not yet begun. She was performing where she could, building something whose shape she couldn't fully see yet, and she was in London for a series of club dates when a friend brought her to a charity benefit for a children's home in Surrey. The benefit was a small affair, 100 people in a rented hall, a string quartet, a silent auction with items nobody particularly wanted. Tina Turner had come because her friend had asked, and because she was in London anyway, and because turning down a benefit for children felt wrong, regardless of how tired she was. She had not come expecting anything to happen. The children's home had sent 4 children to perform at the benefit, a small gesture, the kind of thing that organizers arrange because people respond to children, because children in need made abstract by statistics become real when they stand in front of you and do something. The 4 children sang 2 songs. 3 of them were nervous and endearing in the way that children are endearing when they are asked to perform for strangers and they know it matters, but don't quite know how. The 4th one was different. He was introduced as Thomas. He was 6 years old, and he was led to the front of the group by an older child because he could not see where the front was. He was small even for 6, with the particular stillness that some blind children develop as a compensation for the loss of the spatial information that sighted people absorb constantly without knowing they're doing it. He stood where he was placed and waited. Then he sang. He sang a single verse of a hymn, unaccompanied, in a child's voice that had not yet found its full shape, but that already contained something beyond its years. Not technique, he had no technique, he was 6. Something else, the quality that exists before technique, that technique either preserves or destroys, that is present in certain voices from the beginning as a kind of birthright. Tina Turner had heard it twice before in her life and recognized it immediately both times. She sat very still in her chair and listened. When he finished, there was a moment before the polite applause of 100 charitable Londoners that was different from what came before it and after it. A moment of genuine quiet, the kind that a voice produces when it has done something that the room was not expecting. Tina Turner turned to her friend and said, "Who is that child?" The answer, when she got it, was that Thomas had been at the children's home for 3 years, since the death of his mother when he was 3. He had no father on record. He had no family who had come forward. He had been assessed by 4 prospective adoptive families in that time, and each had declined, not unkindly, not cruelly, but because a blind child represents a specific kind of commitment that many families, honestly evaluating their own capacities, concluded was beyond them. He was not difficult or damaged or unlovable. He was simply a 6-year-old boy who could not see, who had been alone for 3 years, and who sang to himself in the dormitory at night because, as one of the staff members had told the benefit organizer, it was the only thing that seemed to make him completely comfortable. Tina Turner asked if she could meet him. They brought Thomas to her in a small room off the main hall, with a staff member present. He was still formal in the way that children are formal when they have been in institutional care long enough to understand that meeting adults often means being evaluated. He stood near the door with his hands at his sides and waited to understand what this was. Tina Turner sat down on a chair so she was at his level and said, "My name is Tina. I heard you sing tonight. I wanted to tell you it was beautiful." Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Did you like the hymn?" She said she did. He said, "I know 6 hymns and 2 other songs." She asked him what the other 2 songs were. He told her. She asked him to sing one. He did, standing near the door with his hands at his sides, eyes focused on nothing, voice filling the small room in a way that made the staff member go very still. When he finished, Tina Turner looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Thomas, I'm going to come back and visit you. Would that be all right?" He thought about it with the seriousness of a 6-year-old who has learned that things adults say are not always things that happen. Then he said, "Yes, that would be all right." She came back. She came back the following week, and the week after that, and the week after that. She brought nothing in particular, not gifts, not spectacle. She came and sat with Thomas in the common room of the children's home and talked to him and listened to him and learned the particular geography of who he was, what he knew, what he was afraid of, what he found funny, what he wanted that he didn't have words for yet. She told him about music, not about her music or her career or anything that required him to know who she was. She told him about what music did, how it worked, where it came from, why certain voices had certain qualities that other voices didn't. She talked to him about it the way she wished someone had talked to her about it when she was 6 and singing in a Baptist church in Tennessee without any framework for understanding what she was doing or why it mattered. After 6 weeks, she spoke to the home's director and then to a solicitor and then to a social worker named Patricia Aldridge, who would become, over the next 14 months, one of the most significant people in this story. Patricia Aldridge had handled international adoption cases for 11 years. She had seen everything that the intersection of law, bureaucracy, and human longing produces. She had seen cases accelerate and stall and collapse entirely for reasons that had nothing to do with the fitness of the people involved. She had seen money open doors, status open doors, and patience occasionally outlast every door that had been closed against it. She said that the case of Tina Turner and Thomas was unlike any other case she had handled, not because of who Tina Turner was, but because of the quality of her persistence. Every obstacle the process produced, the international paperwork, the residency questions, the waiting periods mandated by Surrey County regulations, the assessment visits, the home study, the court dates that were scheduled and then rescheduled and then scheduled again, met the same response. Tina Turner appeared, on time, prepared with whatever was required, and waited for the next thing to be required. She did not use her name to accelerate the process, which Patricia found unusual in a way she mentioned only once and then set aside as simply being how this particular person operated. Most people in Tina Turner's position, people with resources, people with public profiles, people who had learned that the world moved differently for them than it moved for everyone else, used what they had when the using would help. Tina Turner did not. She said when Patricia raised it once carefully and indirectly, "I want him to come to me through the right door, not a door that was opened because of who I am." Patricia Aldridge thought about that sentence for a long time afterward. She said it was one of the most precise things she had ever heard a prospective adoptive parent say about what the process meant to them, not the outcome, but the integrity of how you arrived at it. The adoption was finalized in August 1983, 14 months after the benefit in the rented hall in London. Thomas was 7 years old. He flew to Los Angeles in the company of Patricia Aldridge, who had made the journey at her own suggestion because she wanted to see it through to the end, and was met at the airport by Tina Turner, who had cleared the rest of the day and the day after that and the day after that. She would say later that the most important thing she did in those first weeks was nothing remarkable. She simply made sure that Thomas knew where everything was. Not metaphorically, physically. The layout of the house, the distance between his room and the kitchen, the feel of the banister on the stairs, the sound the front door made when it was properly closed. She walked through every room with him until he could move through the house without assistance, because she understood, without being told, that freedom for Thomas meant spatial certainty, and that spatial certainty was the foundation on which everything else would be built.
He was enrolled in a school for blind and partially sighted children in Los Angeles, where within a year his teachers were writing to Tina Turner with the specific enthusiasm that teachers deploy when a student does something that surprises them. He was musical in a way that extended beyond singing. He had an ear for pitch and structure that his music teacher described in terms that Tina Turner found, privately, familiar. She recognized what she was reading. She had been in the presence of it the first night in that small room off the main hall in Surrey. The years that followed were the years of Thomas growing up and Tina Turner building the comeback that would make her name known to a generation that hadn't been born when she first made it known. Private Dancer, the tour, the second act that the industry had said wasn't coming. Thomas grew alongside all of it, present for the work and the noise and the machinery of a major career in a way that was unusual for a child, but that seemed, to those who observed it, to suit him. He was not impressed by the machinery. He was interested in the music. He studied formally through his teens, voice, theory, composition. He developed the technique that his natural gift had been waiting for, the structure that gives a voice somewhere to go beyond what instinct alone can carry it. By the time he was in his late teens, the voice that had stopped a room when he was 6 had become something that stopped rooms with intention. In the summer of 1992, Tina Turner was performing at Wembley Arena in London. Thomas was 16 years old. The show was sold out, the kind of crowd that a decade of impossible comeback produces, the kind that comes because the story behind the music has become part of the music itself. Halfway through the second act, Tina Turner stopped the show and said she wanted to introduce someone. She said there was a person in her life who had taught her more about music than she had taught him, which she said with the slight smile of someone making a claim they are prepared to defend. A young man walked onto the stage. He could not see the audience. He could hear them, the low sound of 12,000 people shifting and settling and wondering. He found the microphone by the feel of the stage beneath his feet, the slight elevation of the riser that he had walked twice in the sound check that afternoon. He stood at the microphone and he sang. He sang one song, unaccompanied, the same way he had stood near a door in Surrey a decade earlier and sung for a woman who had asked to hear him. The voice that had been a 6-year-old's instinct was now a 16-year-old's instrument, and what it did to 12,000 people at Wembley Arena on a summer night in 1992 was the same thing it had done to 100 people in a rented hall in 1982. It made them go quiet in the way that genuine things make people go quiet before the recognition catches up and the noise begins. When he finished, Thomas stood at the microphone and the arena came down around him, and Tina Turner stood at the side of the stage and watched and felt something that is only available to people who have been present at the very beginning of something and stayed long enough to see what it became. There is no single reason that some children are chosen and others are not. The mechanisms of adoption are complex, and the reasons families make the choices they make are their own, and not subject to easy judgment. Thomas was not chosen because he was extraordinary, though he was. He was not chosen because Tina Turner understood what his voice would become, though she recognized what it was. He was chosen because a woman sat in a chair at a charity benefit in London and heard a child sing, and something in her went still and certain in the way that things go still and certain when you are in the presence of something that is yours to take care of. She heard him. She went back. She stayed. The rest followed from that. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more stories about the human beings behind music's greatest legends. And if someone once chose you when they didn't have to, tell us about it in the comments. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss one of these stories.